Let's take a look at code.org, Unit 4, Lesson 11, Functions Make. As you're looking through this, be sure to look at the planning guide. The planning guide is extremely helpful in figuring out what variables you are going to use and how to name those variables, what conditional logic that you might want to use in this app and where you'd need to use it, as well as the function that you'll need to make and reuse throughout the app. You'll see here on the screen that I've already started programming this. And while you might expect to see a lot more text in the program or a lot more lines to the code, I wanted to start small and start with something simple that I knew that I could have success with. I always think that's a good approach to programming. Start with one thing, program it, debug it, and then move on to the next part. So what I've done in line one is I've created a variable called string str, and I've set it as just an empty quotes here. I'll put in an onEvent block for the quote input. And this little input dropdown, I had several options there, but the input just allows you to update it in real time. So whenever that is, whenever you type in there, it's going to automatically update that. So I use the variable string, and I'm going to set that as the get text quote input. So here's our quote input. So as I'm typing in the quote input, it's storing that in the string. Now here I go to update screen. And the update screen is a function that I'm going to use throughout this program. The function update screen only has one line in it right now. And it's going to set the text as the quote output. And the quote output's in here. And it's going to set that as the string variable. Now keep in mind the string variable is our get text quote input. If we run this, we can just check that it works. And we see that as I type, it is updating the text, right? So that looks good. That looks good. Now let's add another variable to this thing. So we've got a font family here, don't we? Yes. I'm going to call that variable font. And right now, I'm just going to set that as a blank string as well. I don't know what to call that yet, so I'm just going to leave that blank. Let's put another onEvent in here. And in this onEvent, we are going to do the font family input, and we're going to change that whenever it is changed. All right? So now let's look at our variable. We want to set variable font as, let's see here, as a text input. No, it says create a text input and assign it an element ID. Let's do a set text. Nope. What are we going to do? Yeah, let's do a get text. I think get text would be our best option there. We're going to get text, and we're going to get that text from the font family input. And then in the function, what we want to do is set a property. So set text and set property work a little bit differently. The set text is going to set whatever string is in there, and our variable string is what we're setting. The set property is going to set the font family input. We're going to set that with the font family. And we're going to set that as the variable. If we just set that as Arial, then our font will never change from Arial. But if we set that as the variable font, then that should be able to change. Let's run this and see that it works. Okay, so our quote is still updating our text. And let's see if this is changing our fonts. I don't see that it's working. So let's check our code here. We did a function, we set the property, we've got a variable. So what are we missing? Well, in this onEvent, we're missing a function. We're missing the update screen function. So let's pull that function in here and let's put update screen. So now when we have this onEvent, we're not only going to change the variable in the font, but we're also going to update the screen. So that's why it wasn't changing earlier. Let's reset it to make sure that it still works. Have a nice little message here, hi class, and we'll see if it changes our font. And it still doesn't look like it is working. So what's going on? So we're setting the property. What we see is happening here is that we're setting the property of our font family input. But what do we actually want to change? We want to change the quote output. That's the property that we're actually changing here. So the quote output is going to be this property and not the property on this little guy. So if we reset it, then we should be able to go in and change the font. Aha, good deal. So let's try and replicate this one more time with the color. So let's start with a variable, and let's declare that variable as color. And I kind of like keeping this in order here when I'm going with my variables and my on events. So let's let that be color. And I'm going to just let that be blank for right now. So let's do an on event. And let's do that for the color input. Make sure that's right, color input. And that's going to be when we change it. And we're going to pull our variable back out here. So we'll change our variable color. We'll do a get text. So whenever you're doing a drop-down menu, you'll do a get text. And we're going to get text from what ID? Let's get text from the color input. Now in here for function, we need to update the update screen function. So let's set a property again. And keep in mind, we're not setting the property of this color input, we're setting the property of the quote output. No, actually on this one, we're setting the property of the, what is this property here? Color output. So we'll change the property of the color output. If we did quote output, it would change the color of the font. We don't want that. We want that to be the background color. And we're going to change our background color to red or white or green or one of these hexadecimal. No, we want that to be the variable color. Okay. The last thing that we need to do is go back to this on event. We want to put a update screen in there. So now when we do this, it should update the screen. Okay. So if we run this, let's try some things. Testing 1, 2, 3. Font family, changes it. Color, changes it. Super. So now that you've seen how you can go through some on events and update screens, just calling that function back over and over again, it starts to build up the complexity of the program. Continue working on this. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions down below. Thanks for watching.